I like that song.
That is a good song.
That's pretty cool.
Well, hey guys, welcome to the Vertical Shift podcast, where we engage in candid conversation about real topics, real issues, and all from a Christian perspective. This is Justin.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Tommy.
All right. Well, hey guys, this is episode 1. Excited to kick this off, and we know that there's a few, 2 of you out there listening. So what we want to do is just kind of give you a little rundown about us, and kind of explain a little bit about the show and why we started the podcast, kind of the purpose behind it, and then also just, what's our main goal for this, and kind of just break that down. And so hopefully you like what we're doing here, and honestly, we just pray that the Lord's glorified in it and in our conversation, and what we discuss. So just a little bit about the 3 of us. We'll look over here to Jeff first, and he'll kick it off, and we'll go around the table.
All right. Hey, guys, I'm Jeff. I have been in ministry, 25 years now.
Whoa.
And, so been married 20 years, have 5 kids, 3 biological, and twin boys we adopted through the foster care system. And a lot of different ministry experiences.
And expenses.
You were about to say
expenses.
Yeah, well, I was thinking 5 children, and that's expensive.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So, a lot of different experiences from starting out in student ministry to going overseas and serving as a missionary, and then now back here and in the States and wearing different hats in the role that I'm playing now. So, yeah, that's me.
So Jeff is a pastor. He gets paid to be good. So I'm a layman and I'm good for nothing.
That's true. That's true.
Right. So, hey, I'm Tommy, and I'm just a regular guy that has a regular job. And what I love about this, the studio setup is just amazing.
Right?
Right? I mean, is this not just...
I know there's so many boxes. So many boxes around my feet.
I kind of feel like we're in somebody's closet.
There's no way... Somebody asked, are y'all videoing? Like, no. Look at this place. It's fun, though. But anyway, so... Jeff, you sound really old when you give your description of yourself. It's like on paper,
right?
We should be way older. And then I started thinking, man, you've been married 20. Wait a minute. I've been married 20 years.
That's right.
I've got 2 kids, 2 teenagers. So that's me. Justin, what about you?
Any dogs?
Any
You
chickens?
have like 4?
No, I have 2 dogs, 2 cats, 8 chickens.
Golly.
Partridge in a pear tree.
A lot of eggs.
A lot of eggs.
Yeah. No, so a little bit about me. So married going on 13 years this year. And we've got 3 boys, ranging from about, 11 down to 3. So we're in a busy season, but it's a fun season. All boys, so that always makes it even more fun. People are playing around the house, people are getting hurt. Man, it's a good time. My wife and I, we actually have known each other for quite some time, and you'll learn more about that story. But man, truly my partner in crime. Love her a lot and been through a lot, and just truly outside of the Lord, just a rock and a helpmate. So, with that, work in the business world, do a little consulting, but most of my time is spent with, also serving. Tommy, to your point, lead a small group at church, and engage in some serving things, and some guys groups that we'll talk about. But yeah, man, that's life in a nutshell.
All right.
Yeah.
I should probably go back and redo mine now, because you said so many good things about your wife, and I didn't really mention mine that much. So thanks.
Right. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. He's in the doghouse as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. There's never been a doghouse in my house.
Chicken coop. He can stand mine.
Oh, man. So with that, I think we just kind of talk about, a little bit too, Jeff, you talked about ministry, but how long has each of us been a believer in the Lord?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in the church, and being the youngest of 3 boys, my dad became a believer after my parents were married. And so, faith, looks differently for me being the baby than my oldest brother. And so, everything I've known from the beginning was church. And so I grew up in that, but I did not become a believer truly until I was 15. And it was just through revival at our church that we had, and just challenging questions, and that, man, just pierced my heart, and I could not resist it any longer. So yeah, I've been a believer for 30 years now.
You know what's fun about this is as we go through this journey, we're going to hear each other's stories, and the three of us have some pretty incredible stories. And every story is incredible because it's about God's grace and mercy. That's the most incredible piece of it. But I'll say there's a lot of interesting pieces with each of our stories. We come from a wide variety of backgrounds.
Yeah, very unique.
And so, and Jeff, I've heard your story a number of times. It never gets old. And you know that there's some sadness, I would say, in your story, but out of that sadness was, you know, joy and happiness, but I'm very excited as we go through this journey to hear those things. So, you know, and then it comes to, all right, what is your definition of a believer? So for me and my story is I believed in God pretty much my whole life, but that didn't mean I was, you know, going to heaven.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to be one of those ones that, hey, I've done all these things, but I didn't know you. You know, you didn't know me.
Right. There's a big difference between believing and surrendering.
That's right. So, 6 years, February 23rd of 2024 was 6 years.
Wow.
So we're recording this just a few weeks after that, was 6 years when I fully surrendered my life. And so my story growing up is, I would say I grew up in a Christian house. I did, but it was, with my dad, it was presented in a way that it was hard for me to see how a Christian could be a normal person too.
Sure.
So that was hard for me. My mom was been a rock through the whole thing, but again, I ran from it for so long.
Right.
And it caught up to me.
Yeah.
And Justin, you have a unique story too. Unique, but
it's a road for sure, a windy road. But as far as, you know, grew up not in church all the time, but around it at times. And, you know, Dad was Navy, so we moved around quite a bit. But, you know, with that, you kind of get off track a little bit. And then also you're going to some of the big, you know, holiday services, you know, Christmas, Easter, all that stuff. And then growing up Catholic, there's a whole kind of thing you go through. And we'll dive more into that as the shows go on. But, you know, not becoming a true believer, like surrendering your life to the Lord until 23, 24, somewhere in there.
Years old or year? 23
years
okay.
old. Yeah. Not last year. You know, so with that, you know, there's a lot that you know, I'd heard before, and there's a lot of history with being real kind of angry with God and asking a lot of questions. But man, when the Lord was really working in my heart, it you know, it was softening whether I knew it or not. And that's when I started to kind of ask life questions, you know, the big questions like, you know, God, if you're real, right? Then, you know, would you show yourself, you know, would you do something, all those things. And, you know, eventually, you know, the Lord softened to the point where I just had heard the gospel differently, like blind eyes open, heart opened, you know, and you can't deny that when it happens.
It's funny you say that because I had some of those same questions, but after I became a believer, you know,
that's interesting.
All right. Yeah. So kind of being faced with some things that I'd never seen before on the mission field challenged my faith. And so it caused me to ask those questions, you know, goodness, 7 years after being a believer, a follower. But it just hit differently. To your point, my faith just took a deep dive back to the foundations of why I believe what I believe. And I think everybody has to ask themselves those questions. You know, how do I know God's real? How do I know the Bible is legit and can be trusted and isn't tainted or whatever that, you know, we hear? And so we all have those things. And so those are some of the things we'll walk through, you know, in these episodes and kind of searching that out. But yeah, that's interesting you said that.
That is interesting. Like you'd almost think it would happen and then like,
right.
Yeah.
Every story's different.
Yeah. And, you know, when we get there, you know, I'll talk more about it, but, you know, Tom, you talk about every story is unique and interesting for sure, because it's the Lord's story that's being written and using his people. But like I always say, especially about my wife and then others like that, where you
Here he
gotta,
goes again,
man,
bragging on his
dude, I'm in
wife.
trouble already.
Golly.
Ridiculous.
Aaron, I love you, baby.
Wait a minute.
You're Aaron, right?
Yeah,
Both our
my
wives are
Aaron.
named Aaron.
Yeah,
Just wanna
that's
ma-
true.
Yeah. You
That's
gotta
really
wrap it up.
Wow, that was weird.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah.
I knew what you meant.
You did.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, like, those stories where there's just a long history of just walking with the Lord, not saying that those people don't struggle with things as well, but man, that's an awesome story for somebody, like me and others that don't have that. You know, it's precious. It's sweet. So, well, you know, when we think about, you know, kind of our background and learning more about each other, and sharing that with folks, you know, I think what we want to talk about too is just to get more background on why do we even start this podcast. So, I mean, Tommy, I'll look over to you, man, and pass the baton, and you kind of give us a rundown on, you know, the original group and, you know, what that looked like, and give us a little breakdown, man.
So 8 years ago ish, with Jeff, when you came to town, we met. You had just come off the mission field, and we started meeting together. There was 3 of us that started meeting together. One of our other friends, shout out to Pat. Whoop.
Pat doesn't even know how to access podcasts, probably, if we're being honest.
Flip phone, I don't know. Anyway, we started meeting, and there was just something about the 3 of us meeting and talking about the word and starting to encourage each other and our families and just question, you know, the things that we were doing and why we were doing them, to really give it a different perspective on life and how we go about handling those things. Anyway, I think it just started catching on too. Mm-hmm. Others started seeing us or hearing about us meeting, and Justin, you were like right shortly after you started meeting with us. And from there, man, it just continued to grow. It was just it's been an incredible journey and so fun too, you know. But so I think part of this is, you know, over these last 8 years, developing such a close friendship with you guys. Like, you know, we even talked earlier this evening about how you guys are like the 3rd most important thing in my life. Mm-hmm. So that's like behind God and my family. And I try to imagine sometimes what my life would be like if I didn't have you guys in it.
Yeah. Well, talking about that, I remember specifically when I asked you to be a part of that first group, it was kind of like shell shock. You know, you kind of looked at me like interested, but then like, why are you picking me? Like, what is it about me? I remember you asking those questions, like, what did I do wrong? Something like
Right.
Little did Tommy know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was, I remember it. But it's something that's near and dear to my heart is, sharing some of the struggles I've had with being a Christian and wrapping that into still being normal. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm doing air quotes now. You can't see me, but normal. Because of just the way I saw it, it was hard for me to do that. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt like there's guys that maybe don't have the same background as I do, but I think there's a lot of guys out there that view being a Christian as weak or have to follow a bunch of rules, and they just have a different. They don't have a good perspective of what that really means because they don't have a group of guys to help live that with them. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what I'm hoping some part of this podcast can help reach out to those men out there who yearn for something like that. And maybe they're embarrassed, or maybe they're scared, maybe they don't have anybody, but hey, they can listen in with us. We can help with that, but try to find connections wherever you are and build that, because I promise you there's a dozen others probably within earshot that will want to join that as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. I think super impactful as you're touching on it. And I think too, it's such a beautiful picture, Jeff. And when you came and you're kind of like, hey, coming off the mission field and then, doing ministry here in the States again. And then it was like, hey, you wanted to take guys and kind of model the discipleship kind of relationship that Jesus,
Right.
Portrayed and led.
I mean, I remember going to the mission field as a 22-year-old and for a 2-year program called the Journeyman Program. And in that, I remember specifically being asked to share my faith with somebody, lead them to the Lord, train them and equip them within 6 weeks for them to go do the same thing. And I just thought, man, 6 weeks, that's unbelievably fast. But everything was about this rapid church planting movement type thing. And really over the long haul, I just saw that some of these quote unquote churches that were planted didn't exist anymore because it was so fast. You gotta experience life with people. You gotta let the rug get ripped out from underneath them to, find out really where they stand and what they believe. And so I was determined that I wasn't going to put an end cap on discipleship, and we're just going to do life together as long as we can and just keep challenging each other. So I think through that, what we've seen over the past 7 years is some real tough life situations that some guys have had to walk through. We got to walk through that with them. We've seen marriages saved. We've seen salvation.
Yep.
So those types of things are so incredibly powerful, but I think those come with time. Yeah. You got to build that safe space. You got to build trust with each other.
That's another thing that you hit on too, is the safe space and the trust. I mean, we come in knowing that, hey guys, we want to be open, we want to be real, but it's not going to leave this room. We're not going to go out and share it. Now we may talk to our wives, and we all are close to our wives in a way that if we are praying for someone, but we respect each other's, definitely each other's situation. And if something is shared in confidence, it remains in confidence.
Right.
And, that's a very important piece of it that we established long ago, because without openness, we're all going to be hiding something under the rug.
Right.
I mean, if you had too many things under the rug, what happens, Jeff?
It gets lumpy.
Or you trip over it.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you too, walking through some of those real issues, it's really been cool to see and watch, growth in individuals, growth in marriages, growth in families, like even guys going like, man, maybe realizing like, man, I'd have that growing up, and now guys have a chance to do something different with their legacy and with their kids, so there's tons of things that it's impacted. It's been super cool to watch.
And we haven't even touched the ripple effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes too, people think, oh, well, perhaps Jeff must have been discipled early on, and I wasn't discipled till I was on the mission field. Somebody took me aside, and that's where I saw what that relationship can look like.
In 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I was.
It's like 10-minute abs.
Right.
Wait, is there 10-minute abs?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never had them.
I'm going to look that up while y'all talk.
Yeah. So, it's not like somebody taught me how to do this. I just know that's what I craved. I wanted somebody to be with me for the long haul, and not just some short distance so they could check it off the list. So,
yeah. So let's talk about like, that's how it started, right? Now let's talk about where we're at. And so today, like, how many guys are active in the guys group?
Well, at Thomas Point, we started with 3.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have 20 in the text.
We have 20 in the text, but we have several that, this particular semester are not able to participate, and so there's different
coming in and out.
times.
I mean, people, but they stay connected in the text. I mean, we still text, we check on them, we pray for them.
Right.
Well, because that's the thing, life happens.
That's
it's not, it's not being insensitive to those things.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would, just shy of 30 people right now, 30 men meeting together.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then, when I think about, how it started with the group, the original group, and then all the things we walked through, which we'll touch more on all that stuff as episodes come up, but just, from the year-long, chronological study to breaking things down in different ways, different books, reading different books. I mean, just
all those things can be podcasts on their own.
Oh,
we got to
man.
get to, especially that whole year in the journey of the Bible. That was awesome.
But that's where it's been good too. It's like we were in a room talking through things where it was a safe space to ask the questions that like, hey, did that really happen? Or who's this person? And just breaking it down like you would in a classroom kind of deal, but around a group of guys that were just being honest and figuring things out, and being guided. Like if somebody didn't know something, we knew that there was some research taking place to be able to come back to the group. And so, so when we think about all of that, like that's the foundation of why we felt the Lord kind of calling us to start this up in this show. But then we also want to, say like the purpose of all this isn't just so we could sit around this, this table and these
Fancy
boxes at our
studio.
feet. Yeah. And just talk to each other, because we could do that on a phone. But, our main purpose here is that the Lord is going to be honored in the conversations we're having, just like he was honored in seeing lives truly impacted with that guys group. And so taking that to a broader group, and, people don't always feel comfortable asking, the questions they feel are embarrassing or they should know, or maybe you're just figuring this out because, you haven't been plugged in or you didn't grow up in church. We kind of take that for granted and think like everybody did, and I'm the only one that didn't. So we kind of get, in our little shell. And then, sometimes like, guys, what would you say? What's the risk of not asking those questions?
I mean, the risk of not asking those questions is you don't get the answers. I mean,
right.
Or you find the wrong answer.
Right.
I mean, sometimes when you don't ask a question, you're going to get an answer that you wish you'd asked the question, that you get it. You're going to get an answer to a question you didn't ask.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times you think to the question I ask is, why are we not asking those questions? Right. And the reason is because we're grown men and we should know maybe those answers by now, and we don't. So we're embarrassed or prideful.
I'll also say there's just in general, another air quote here, society's view on what the man should know everything and should be the strong one of the house and do everything, and as a man, we know deep down we don't know all those things, but because of this society's label on us, we're fearful to show some vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah. I love, Tommy, how you always go like big picture, and I'm like, I go down to like the micro view, and I'm just like, yeah, that would just be embarrassing. Like, it'd be embarrassing if you're asking something you don't know that you feel like you should. And especially when you talk about, your family's involved and kids, and it's like, man, well, what if I mess this up? And, but yeah.
Those are the struggles that I've gone through. Those are the things that I've wrestled with. And in some cases, those are the things that I heard told to me. Well, you're a man. You should make that decision. You should make that decision without having to consult someone. Why can't you just man up?
Yeah. And we've talked about in our guys group too, and you're not asking these questions among people that are going to point you in the right direction, right to the Lord. It's like, hey, when you have a question, you start to insert your own feelings, your own logic, your own truth, instead of going to the source. And that's it's dangerous.
And those are the types of relationships that can impact your family in a negative way. Yeah. When you got buddies telling you this, hey, well, it's nothing wrong with that, or they want to say what they know you want to hear.
Yeah.
I would truly question your friendship when you have those types of friends that are looking to tear your family apart, or put you on a path that is going to be wrong. But
yeah, we've all done the pull someone down from a chair versus pull up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think too, underlying most men is this fear of failure, right? And to admit you're failing in an area, nobody wants to do that, right? That's a fear that keeps us from admitting it. And, and I would say, Tommy, to your point, to your credit, I think, in that you have been very receiving of, hey guys, I want help in this area of my life, and I want you to hold me accountable to it. Don't let me go back down this same road that I struggle in. And so in that, you have to be willing to let people speak into your life, no matter how uncomfortable that is. So you have to be willing to share, but then also you have to be willing to, take that constructive criticism to grow in your faith.
Yeah. Well, with all that, I mean, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, where'd we get the name from? Right. That was a debacle in and of itself.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, there were text messages.
Can we have a show on that, please?
We just spent too much time.
Hey, we're going to have a show and discuss the names. Seriously.
Like, it's been easier to name
because
all three of our boys than to name this show.
We're going to sell these names because some of them are really good.
So some of them are great, and there's one person in this trio that didn't like it. And we'll talk about that,
right?
Because I think you all will love it,
dude.
In the end,
the voice of reason is what you. You can replace that with Justin. But yeah, I mean, but guys, just to give you a background on the name, right? It's this whole idea, this whole show, this whole name of the show is that we're shifting our perspective towards that vertical relationship between us and God and gaining his perspective, not looking outward and trying to fill it with all the things of the world and the worldly wisdom, the worldly logic, but truly that vertical relationship. And then, Proverbs 2:6 came to mind when we were kind of putting some stuff together. Just says, "For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding." I mean, it doesn't get more simple than that.
Right.
So, what we plan to do, guys, I'm looking at you across the room. We're going to look at a bunch of different topics.
Across the studio.
Across the studio. Yeah. We're going to look at a bunch of different topics from the lens of Scripture for guidance and wisdom through asking some of the questions that we ourselves have been asking in this guys group or that we know have come up. So we know that other people, not even just men, are wrestling with some of these questions.
And the cool thing about some of these questions aren't these big grandioso questions. They're everyday things. Like, I mean, I may do a little spoiler alert, but just the drive home. How do we shift our perspective to a vertical one on the way home? Just those types of things. I mean, we're going to be talking about a lot of that. It's not, like I said, not these grandioso religious theology, that type things. I mean, some of that may come up because Jeff's a pastor and he likes to throw all that.
All I'm saying
all
is
his knowledge around.
if there is an uptick in people driving safer and using turn signals, I feel like it's got to be related to people listening to the show. That's all I'm saying.
Well, if there's an uptick of people wearing fanny packs, it's going to be because
they're in. They've been in.
They've never
forget this shoulder bag stuff that women call it. Yeah, so I'll tell you, looking at all these different topics we're talking about, not everyone's going to have somebody in their life that they can go to and ask the questions, right? Or even receive, like good responses, as Jeff was talking about. So we just want to share some of our experiences. Yeah, and incorporate God's word into it. And it's going to be a bunch of like life issues, family stuff, finances. I mean,
the decisions we've made that have been wrong, and we've learned from them. We learn from each other, and I learned so much from you guys too. So
I literally shared that with somebody today that. Sometimes we feel like because our story's broken that, I can't be used. But I think when somebody shares their broken story, it helps me, especially if they're further ahead of me. It makes me pause for a minute and kind of evaluate what I'm doing currently. Mm-hmm. And I can learn from that. So know that your story's powerful and everybody's is unique.
Yeah.
Can you learn from getting closer to the microphone?
Oh my goodness. This is going to be fun, guys.
Just rest your nose on the top.
Right. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually does sound good.
Good.
But, so show one, guys, in the books. So
Dude, this is going to be a trip, y'all.
It is going to be fun. I'm a little nervous.
No.
It's good stuff. Like we've walked through it for 7 years, and now to bring that a little bit further to a broader audience, it's going to be fun and nervous all the same time.
Well, we just don't want to be boring.
No, we're not. You are. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
We'll hold you accountable.
So, guys, for this show, that's a wrap. But I'll tell you, we're excited about the next show. Hope you'll tune in to it next time. And we're going to dive into Tommy's story a little bit and really talk about, how he had to learn, what faith looked like and church looked like, because, there was somebody in his family that kind of struggled with mental illness, and that really created a view for Tommy. Wow.
My bad.
All right, Justin, you hit the button.
Yep. So let's wait. I'm still talking.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope. It's it. Episode 1.
Let's go ahead and wrap this up, y'all.
Cue music.
Hey, this has been awesome. All right.
I love it.
We'll see y'all next time.
We'll get better. I promise.
No, we will.
Right?
Oh, yeah.